Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere and welcome to the Niche Cast, coming at you on the 23rd of April, 2024. We're from the niche-case.com, where you can read a lot about Aotearoa sport. We are here for your insights, your deep dives, your notes, your nuggets, your wrinkles, and your nuance. We love it. We love Aotearoa sport. Fresh on the website at the moment. I did do a Kiwi NRL spotlight on Alec MacDonald, Melbourne Storm forward, who is I've said it before and I'll say it again, if you're doing the hard mahi at the Melbourne Storm, that's impressive. And Alec MacDonald, first summer training with the Storm, I think that was ahead of 2022, and then he just made a debut the next season. So he's made a fabulous impression with the Melbourne Storm. He's played in all 6 games this season with the Melbourne Storm. Born in Auckland, moved to Australia at a young age, but I'm putting the Kiwi NRL spotlight on him. Also got a fresh Kiwi County Tour wrap that we'll touch on in a jiffy. That's live on the website. You've done a Wellington Phoenix game review, which you've done a few, which I like. I like to see you jumping on the bandwagon. You're amping up the bandwagon, although at this stage of the season, it's a bit iffy. It's a bit stagnant. They're not quite as dominant as we were hoping, but they're still chasing A-League glory, and we'll be talking about the Wellington Phoenix coming up in our podcast today as well. Lots of bits and bobs, including the epic Niche Case Derby victory for the St. George Illawarra Dragons over the Warriors. Congratulations to yourself. Congratulations to the Dragons. Good performance from them. We also got some Blackcaps are playing. They're playing T20 cricket in Pakistan. And we'll see what else we chat about today. As I said, we're from the niche-case.com. We usually have a newsletter out every Monday night and also Friday night. But at the moment, the Papatua Nuku and Ranganui, the gods, they're working against us. So we haven't been able to publish the newsletter on the Monday night. We're still working to get it done today on Tuesday. We'll see how we go. So those are usually out every Monday and Friday night. Newsletters covering Aotearoa sport via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com. You can use Substack to upgrade to a paid subscription and access our subscriber podcast. You can also upgrade. You can also join the Patreon whānau, and we just copy that newsletter straight into the Patreon whānau the day after it publishes on Substack. So if you join the Patreon whānau, everything just comes straight to you. It's the best way to support the Niche Case straight up the guts. Of course, you can also support us with Buy Me a Coffee. You can jam a paid Substack subscription, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, bit of TikTok, bit of Facebook. We're always out here doing our best for Aotearoa sport. I think I speak for everyone when I say we need a bit of mindfulness.
Yeah, definitely speak for me. I've been in dire need, which got me thinking, like, what kind of mindfulness would be the ideal in that state of mind. And I thought a bit of Marcus Aurelius meditation, stoicism is probably right about what the doctor ordered. So this one here from Book 4, are they chapters? I don't know what you call them. Line 9, whatever, segment number 9. It was for the best, so nature had no choice but to do it.
Shout out nature. Just running the show, to be honest. Nature's always running the show,
and who are we to argue?
Exactly, because I'm just a silly old human and I've got no powers compared to Mother Nature and this beautiful planet that we live on. Not the best weekend for the major sports that we cover. As I said, well, for you personally, the Dragons had a win over the Warriors.
Depends.
But the Warriors lost. I think the Phoenix had a draw, or was that a loss?
It was a draw, but they would have won, but they missed a last-minute penalty. And also missed a bunch of other chances, which we'll no doubt come back to later.
As this is happening, and as I'm thinking about how to set up this podcast, what's the biggest, best thing in Aotearoa sport, or just the things that we love to cover, I want to talk about county cricket. Because we got some bad boys over in England doing some stuff. Will Young. What did Will Young do? Just a cheeky old 174 not out. In his first game with Nottinghamshire, they played out a draw with Somerset, but Will Young did go large in the second innings, 27 runs in the first innings, and this means that including his last game of Plunkett Shield, he's got scores of 90, 27 and 174 in his last 3 innings, and he's pretty good at batting. After that 27, his first class average dipped below 40. But a big not out innings means that he's above 40 now. So he's averaging 40.58 over 121 first class games, which is absolutely swashbuckling from Will Young. Also averaging 42 in list A cricket and 44 in ODIs. Didn't have the best test series against Australia. Scores of 9, 15, 14 and 1. But as we know, he was opening the batting in place of Devon Conway. So not his ideal spot. And I think he's batting number 3 for Nottinghamshire. So that 3 and 4 seem like the best spots for Will Young. Meanwhile, Nathan Smith, he scored his second half century of the county championship season. Worcestershire were defeated by Durham, and Nathan Smith took 1 wicket, then 2 wickets, so 3 wickets overall in the game, but he scored runs. 33 not out and 57, so his last 3 innings of county championship batting are 58, 33 not out and 57. This, it's pretty impressive what Nathan Smith is doing in county championship cricket. He is the leading wicket taker for Worcestershire, 13 wickets at an average of 19, and he's also averaging 50 with the bat. So Nathan Smith is doing some great things over in England, less so with Tom Bruce and Will Williams at Lancashire, and Blair Tickner's doing all right with Derbyshire in Division 2. I'd also add something to keep an eye on. Will Young scored 174 not out. Shout out to Joe Clark, batter for Nottinghamshire. He scored 213 not out. That's his 3rd century in 3 games of county championship cricket. They were playing against Shoaib Bashir, England test spinner. So they went to 440 for 2, and Bashir didn't take a wicket. So that's pretty cool. What do you make of the performances of Nathan Smith, Will Young, or anything else there with county championship cricket? At the same time as we have the Blackcaps versus Pakistan T20 series, in which Mark Chapman went berserk. We've got Mark Chapman and Ish Sodhi as the leading Blackcaps in this series after 2 games. And I was going to throw it to you, but I'll just keep going because I've got a nice little nugget here. This series is 1-1. And we know this is a 2nd-tier Blackcaps team, but it's 1-1. And they're having a scrap. They're fighting against Pakistan in Pakistan. The Blackcaps have played 8 T20 games in Pakistan. And those 8 games, 3 wins, 3 losses, and 2 no results. So this series is 1-1. Overall, they're 3-3. 4 T20s in Pakistan. Fascinating time for Kiwi cricket with the Blackcaps in Pakistan, as well as a couple of Kiwi lads doing good things in county championship cricket.
Yeah, I mean, there's an incredible stat about Will Young there where which like credit where it's due. I believe it was Shorty Fly Slip on Twitter who threw this one up. That it was what's his name? Joe Clark was batting with Will Young. Two extremely what's the word? Basic names? I don't know. Very like AI generated kind of English names. Those Will Young and Joe Clark, but they had a massive partnership, which is the new third wicket or fourth wicket, whichever one it was. I think it was a new third wicket partnership. You said they were 400 and something for two. So the new record third wicket partnership for that county. The previous record was set 121 years ago by a fellow called Gunn and someone else. That would be the fellow called Gunn who founded Gunn and Moore. Like the dude who invented the Gunn and Moore bats used to have that record, which Will Young just helped break whilst batting with a gun and more with a gun and more bat, which is extremely. I mean, it doesn't mean anything, but it's extremely cool how there's just that random coincidence happened to. He broke the record. He broke a record held by the dude who made the bats that he uses. I don't think he had the local butcher's stickers on the original Gun and Moores, though. I think that's a Will Young. That's a specialty of his. Yeah, but him and Nathan Smith popping up, doing excellent things in county cricket. Seems like I don't know because we've framed the stuff in Pakistan as sort of like developmental kind of angles, and this seems like a continuation of that, where the two guys who are probably the most in line for Blackcap stuff, like Nathan Smith is right now the Blackcaps' most eligible bachelor, arguably, like the dude who hasn't played for the Blackcaps, who's the closest to getting there in a variety of formats as well. He could be angling for. And Will Young, obviously, we know he's now a pretty established Blackcap who just happens to not be on the tour right now. Probably the most, well, no, Tom Latham, but then beyond Tom Latham, the most established of the guys who are like not with the Blackcaps, but also not with IPL at the moment. So that's just that seems like good positive developmental angles as well. There's just like the guys who have the most to gain seem to be gaining the most, which is good. That's what you want to see, isn't it?
And they're like Nathan Smith, as we've had a giggle about specifically on the subscriber podcast last week, which is available for the Patreon whānau and those with a paid Substack subscription. County Championship, bit of Kookaburra ball, bit of Duke ball.
That's right.
Doesn't matter to Nathan Smith. He's got wickets in every innings and he's got back-to-back 50s. So he's doing all right. And Will Young, he just scores runs against any ball, to be honest. And he loves, well, any ball in England because he has scored a lot of runs in County Championship cricket for other teams in the past as well. What's caught your eye from the Blackcaps versus Pakistan T20 series? Any little bits and pieces there that you want to highlight or ask about?
Well, the return of the Tapal T moments was a good one. I forgot about that, and then that's popping up like 4 or 5 times per T20 game, which is maybe a little bit of overkill. I have noticed how very like the advertising in this Pakistan stuff is so integrated, like everything is, it's not just cut to an ad break, it's everything's like built into the broadcast. But you know, do what you got to do. I laughed as well when there was one of those things was like a quiz question that they played up on the big screen, and we were talking about this on that same subscriber pod about how Pakistan keep changing their captains, and they actually had a quiz question of like, who was the captain when New Zealand last came to Pakistan? And it wasn't like when New Zealand last came to Pakistan in 1973 or anything. It was who was the captain when New Zealand last came to Pakistan in 2023, 1 year ago. It wasn't even a long time ago. Although I was thinking about that being like, actually, I don't know if I would know for certain who the New Zealand captain was in that series for different reasons, because they mix it up for these away trips. But I'd guess it was probably Mitchell Santner, but like it's Michael Bracewell now. It could have been Tim Southey or someone. I know for certain who it wouldn't have been, and that's it wouldn't have been Kane Williamson. He didn't play a T20 last year, I don't believe. But no, the standout from this, I even thought he didn't bat in the first game. Second game, he top scored, but only with 19. This is Mark Chapman, of course. But I thought in that game, he looked sharp, like he looked comfortable. He just got out for 19 kind of thing. And then the Black Caps crumbled after that and got bowled out for 90. But like it felt like that was, I don't know. Because the thing is, he did the exact same thing in the third game, Mark Chapman. He got to about 15 to 20 range. He chipped one up. He should have been out. He was dropped. And then he goes ballistic and has an incredible innings. Mike Chapman seems like the dude who does this when no one's watching better than anyone else. Like he doesn't necessarily like. I reckon if you polled a bunch of just casual New Zealand cricket fans, told them to pick their T20 World Cup squad, I reckon Mike Chapman would be surprisingly low on that list for a lot of people because I don't know if he's had a statement performance in a home game or in a sort of at a World Cup or just when everyone's kind of watching. And for example, like his T20 average in New Zealand is 18.42 with a 129 strike rate. Hasn't got a score over 50 in T20 internationals for the Blackcaps in Aotearoa. Like that's kind of probably the version of Mark Chapman that a lot of people have seen. But if you watch Mark Chapman when he bats in Pakistan specifically, he's kind of like Sachin Tendulkar on steroids. I don't know, like maybe Chris Gale on steroids is a better version. He's scored. These are his scores in Pakistan, and because he played that other series last year, he's playing this series here. He scored 34, 65 not out, 16 not out, 71 not out, 104 not out, 0 not out. Didn't face a ball that day. And then in this series, 19 and 87 not out. He averages 198 in Pakistan, 396 runs from, what did I say? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 innings. 2 dismissals from those 8 innings, 100, 350s. He's hitting a boundary every 4 balls that he faces. Somehow, I don't know how this works. Like maybe hypnotize them or something to think that every ground he plays at is Rawalpindi. But if they can work that out, the Black Caps, then they've got the world's best T20 batter on their hands.
It's a bit tricky with Mark Chapman because you don't necessarily know with the Hong Kong stuff like what's home, what's away. But
yeah, I had to those numbers. I had to sort of mix them up to take out the Hong Kong stuff. Just add everything post 2017 to work that out. But yeah, you're right. It skews it a little bit.
Away from home, which is a far bigger sample size, he only played 2 games in Hong Kong. He's only played 8 games in Pakistan, but he's played 25 games away from home with an average of 51 and a strike rate of 148. The funky thing that you're alluding to there, Kiwi summer, he averaged 12 with a strike rate of 111. Whereas last year, so these are his last 3 years, 2022, average of 30.8, strike rate of 164. 2023, average of 44.3, strike rate of 142. This year, averaging 29 with a strike rate of 153, most of which is bolstered by his mahi in Pakistan. And I think Chapman's a certainty for the T20 World Cup squad. What I'm fascinated in is the options available here. Mark Chapman, funky hitting lefty. Jimmy Neesham, big hitting lefty. Michael Bracewell, big hitting lefty. That's a trio of skillful, talented, powerful left-handers batting between 5 and 8. So you could deploy a Black Caps team with all 3 of those dudes in. But also, if you're going to a T20 World Cup, you can kind of go, okay, Chapman's out, injured. We're going Neesham or Bracewell. Chapman keeps his place, someone else is unavailable. We're bringing in Bracewell and Neesham, and we maintain our powerful lefty in that area of the batting lineup. Like some other teams, they might not even have a lefty. Some other teams might be selecting a dude just because he's a lefty. The Black Caps have 3 lefties who all love to hit boundaries. And I think that's just a nice little asset to have in this Black Caps T20 World Cup squad. Also, bit of Zach Folks, bit of Willow Raw, bit of Ben Sears, so that's nice to see. Ish Sodhi is the leading bowler, leading wicket taker. He's got 3 wickets in this series so far. And I actually got a similar vibe to Mark Chapman because as we've discussed, Chapman wasn't that great in the Kiwi summer. Neither was Ish Sodhi. So last summer, 9 games, 8 innings, 6 wickets and an average of 37.6, 8.47 RPO. Now he's the leading wicket taker, averaging 14, economical at 6.1 RPO. And what do we have here now? Ish Sodhi, he's in his 5th year in a row averaging below 30. So 2018 he averaged 37, 2019 he averaged 35. Now he's staying below 27, let's say. So that's good to see after a bit of a dip in the home summer, as we alluded to. Lots of really fun Kiwi cricket stuff happening. Next round of county championship games start Friday. I think the Blackcaps 30-20, there's a bit of a break, and they're also playing Friday morning, I believe. The Dragons, victorious over the Warriors. I want to put this out there because, like, we've obviously news came through. James Fisher-Harris, that's all honkadory. Obviously, it's a lot more than honkadory. It's exciting, but I kept reminding myself to just come back to the present moment. We're here now. We got games of footy to win now. I got shit to do today, right? Like all these next season, that's next season. That's 12 months away. So for your own sanity, just try focus on today, chop wood, carry water, do your thing today, do what you need to do today, focus on the present moment. Maybe just have a relax. Just kick back and be with yourself. But in a footy sense, in a sporting sense, you got to win the games right now because you're the Warriors and you're not in the top 8. So everyone's got this perception of the Warriors. The Warriors, they're a top 4 team. The Warriors, they're one of the best teams in the NRL. Oh my God, the Warriors, they're replacing Fanua Blake with Fisher-Harris. The Warriors are 10th. The Warriors have 3 wins and 3 losses. The Warriors and a draw. The Warriors have had stink performances at Mount Smart twice. Against the Sharks. Against the Sea Eagles. And I haven't actually seen anything from the Warriors to suggest they are a championship caliber team. I'm optimistic that we will see those signs. I'm optimistic that there will be progress throughout the season. But after 7 games, there is nothing to suggest the Warriors are a contender this year. Like, there's the defense isn't quite stopping the best teams, or I just haven't seen anything. It's just simple. I just haven't seen anything. I haven't seen the attack, the defense, the performances across the roster. It's a very interesting thing because there is this perception of the Warriors, but the cold, hard reality is that they aren't there right now. If we look, so who are the contenders? I think the Panthers, 3 in a row. They're still doing great things. They are my favorites to win this competition this year and go 4 in a row. The Broncos and Storm, they've shown signs that they are just as good as last season. And that's kind of where I settle. Those 3 teams are my main contenders. Sharks are first, but they haven't actually done anything to flip the storyline around the Sharks about their top 8, bottom 8 opposition and wins against good teams and whatnot. The Dolphins, they're third. Who knows how they'll wash up. Like, it's a pretty crazy season this season. We've seen results this round, upset victories. who's to say they're upsets, and who's to say the Bulldogs, Dragons, those type of teams, the Tigers, they're just better. They're just better this season. So it's a far more competitive season. And if the Warriors were a top 4 team last year, and we're just automatically slotting them in as a top 4 team this year and a contender, I haven't seen anything to like warrant that belief.
Yeah, I mean, because I was surprised a couple of weeks ago to look at the table and see how the Dolphins, for example, I think were just way up there, and thinking of the Dolphins really good this season? And then I looked at who they'd beaten, and it was like Dragons, Titans, and some of these kind of teams. It's like, okay, well, they might have improved, but I remember they started quite well last year as well, and then faded off. And also, there's a definite case to say that maybe they're this early in the season, the fixtures haven't balanced out yet. Some
You've
teams have just
also
played a lot of better
There's also
teams. Others,
buys and
and
all
yeah,
sorts of
there's
stuff. Yeah.
things like that as well. Who's had the buy early and gets the 2 point bonus, and then it's that shows a lot more at this stage when some teams have had it and others haven't. That's all true.
Just
And if
to
you look
that
at
point,
who's
sorry. To
yeah,
that
go.
point, the Warriors right now they have 7 points. If they
Mhm.
had a bye, you add 2 points to that, they would have 9 points, and they would be Seagulls also have 9 points. So they would be
Yeah,
fifth or sixth. So if you
they'd be
add the
sixth on
bye,
points differential. Yeah,
they would be sixth. Even then, if the Warriors are sixth, haven't had the bye, I'm saying the same stuff. Because I'm watching the footy and I haven't seen the championship pedigree DNA caliber this season.
yeah. And I noticed the top 4 teams have all played 6 games, which I guess means they've all had a bye, and the top 4 teams are all benefiting from that. However, the top 4 teams are, the first and second on that list are the Sharks and the Storm, who have beaten the Warriors this season. So there's 2 ways to look at that. As well, the Warriors, 2 of their losses came in the first 2 rounds against the 2 teams who are currently top of the table. That suggests that they're better than 10th. We know they are better than 10th. I don't think that's a easily understandable thing. That can be something where you like take some, I don't know, take some heart from that. It's like, yeah, well, they've lost to better teams. They'll have easier fixtures coming up. I think their next 2 are against the Titans and the Knights. They've already beaten the Knights once. I think that's right. Is it Knights? Yeah, it is. And then they play the Roosters, and then they're at home against the Panthers and home against the Dolphins. So those 3 games after, like, they should win their next 2, but those 3 after, I think, are where we're going to get a much better gauge of where this team is at, because that's when they have to start beating some quite good teams. And I think that's where they're at. Like, the 3 highest placed teams on the ladder they've played so far lost to the Sharks, lost to Melbourne, and drew with Manly. Like, it's one thing to say, okay, like some of the points that they've dropped have been against good teams, but the thing is, the Warriors want to be one of those good teams. They're not trying to just crack the top 8. They're trying to win finals games and compete for a championship. In which case, you have to be able to beat the top teams. So saying that you've only like the 2 of their defeats against 2 of the best teams, yeah, that's actually maybe a negative thing in this case, where like it is telling us that they're not competing with the best teams right now. That's the proof right there that they're not uh, in that kind of contention bubble at the moment. However, I will say, like, it did feel like last year there was very much a snowball effect where the Warriors at this stage of the season didn't feel like the team where they became at the end of the season. So it is a long term. They will continue to improve. They'll find some rhythm. They'll find some flow. But yeah, through 7 weeks, I don't know. I think most people's preseason expectations for this team probably have not been exceeded to this point.
I appreciate the background and the future gazing that you're offered there. Looking forward to the next few games, some opponents played. But this is a very interesting time right now, because we do have a game on Thursday afternoon against the Titans, Anzac Day footy at Mount Smart Stadium. And we're just coming off that loss to the Dragons. So the thing that I'm saying is that the Warriors, the performance against the Dragons involved a lot of similar stuff to what we've seen throughout the season. So we've seen the Warriors have clunky attacking motions. We've seen the Warriors have some dubious defense, even though numerous commentators will highlight they've got really good defense. I haven't seen that kind of resolute, staunch goal line defense that we came to appreciate last season. And if you're a high effort, clued up team like the Dragons, you can give the Warriors a really good contest. By that, I mean some of the details, so just chasing from the inside, because the Warriors love to cut angles, offer different running angles and shapes. But if all 12 players in the defensive line are moving together, none of those angles matter, because those angles is just cutting back into defenders who are covering the inside shoulders of their teammates. And that's a really important element of Dragons footy. We talked about the Dragons having good tackling. They don't miss many tackles. So not only are they working hard in an intangible sense with their effort and their desire to support their teammate and cover the hole beside them, but then they'll make that tackle. And it felt like against the Dragons, the Warriors were almost through the hole a few times. Like Egan almost got through. Tuivasa-Sheck, Nickel Clockstar, whoever it is, they almost got through, but the Dragons made their tackles. And I think the Warriors I don't think there has been as big a disparity between their best and worst footy this season. I think they've been playing between a 6 and 8 out of 10 all season, but it just depends on the opponent for the result. Some teams, they're going to crumble, and there's no resilience. There's no working hard for your teammate, because all the issues for the Rabbitohs weren't there for the Dragons, right? The Dragons are busting their ass for their teammate and their coach. I don't think the Titans are going to do that. So like I can say, yeah, I haven't seen championship DNA. I haven't seen attacking footy, defensive footy, tactics and strategy and bench rotation of a championship caliber. I haven't seen that from the Warriors this season, and that's all right. There's a long time to go, but also they're playing the Titans on Thursday. So I'm not sure if it matters right now, but it is something to keep an eye on, because the Warriors have been kind of ho-hum, good patches, bad patches, and I think that Dragons game kind of summed up where the Warriors are at right now. But I think it's also a little bit specific to the Dragons, because the Dragons are impressive in certain areas, right? Zach Lomax is going to out-jump any of the Warriors' backs. The Dragons are a very powerful forward pack. So Jack DeBellin's coming off the bench. Blake Lowry's coming off the bench after Molo has gone crazy. They got a very powerful edge forward in Jaden Sewer. They got a bit of speed in Terrell Sloan. Like, he's offering a bit of zip. Moses Sully won the centre battle against Rocco Berry. Like this, it kind of felt like a good matchup for the Dragons, especially after the Warriors. Well, the start of that game was all about the Warriors rolling through their plan, right? Like the commentators, this is what the Warriors do. It's kick, grind, set for set. All that stuff we've come to know and love about the Warriors. And just like, it felt like they were settling into that flow, but that flow was the Dragons' flow, because they were more physical. They had better effort. So the set for set grind just played into the Dragons' style of footy, because they're working hard, but also they got Jack DeBellin coming off the bench, Blake Lowry coming off the bench, more oomph. And part of this is that I haven't seen... Every team's got injuries, so like it's just null and void. You can't say, oh, well, they're missing this player, missing that player. Every team's battling through injuries. The Warriors will win games against teams who are missing players, and so on. I say that because there's no Dylan Walker, there's no Marata Niukore, who I think are going to be key figures on the bench. But I haven't seen a trust or I don't want to say the best use of the bench because I don't know what the best use is. Like the coach seems to know more about rugby league than me, but I don't think the way the 17 players on game day are being managed is going to win an NRL championship. Because you got not many minutes for some players. You've got a lot of some players are playing a lot of minutes, too many minutes. There isn't necessarily a spark or X factor coming off the bench. And regardless of whether we have that player, we as the Warriors, I'm not sure if Andrew Webster's fully trusting of those impacty type of players off the bench. So I haven't necessarily seen an NRL championship type of bench either. And again, I don't think none of this will matter on Thursday afternoon at 4 p.m. when they take on the Titans, because the Titans aren't very good. Obviously, losing to the Titans will hammer this point home and it will cause some major issues. Because, okay, let's just reflect. Let's go down your avenue and look backwards and look forwards, but mainly backwards because the Warriors drew with the Sea Eagles and the Sea Eagles had a kind of narrow victory over the Titans. So does that tell us that the Sea Eagles are awesome and the Warriors did well to draw? Or is that saying the Sea Eagles are incredibly inconsistent and the Warriors did well to draw, but they were playing terrible against the okay team? And we've now got two pretty mediocre performances by the lofty standards the Warriors have set themselves. Like, that wasn't a good game against the Sea Eagles. And it wasn't a good game against the Dragons. And the Warriors have conceded 55 points in those two games, and they have scored 34. Interesting times. But again, there's so much mayhem happening. Big mayhem, exciting mayhem. A lot of really cool stuff happening for the Warriors. But they need to play some good footy. And I don't think anything that comes up in this game against the Titans will change how I'm feeling right now. Like, if the Warriors destroy the Titans 40-0, that's not going to make me think like they're a championship contender. But if they get smoked at home on Anzac Day, that might have an impact on how I'm thinking, but I don't know if that will happen. And you can also, that might chalk that one up to a blip on the radar, flush the dunny, keep moving forward. But we'll have to wait and see. But ultimately, Dragons were too good, and their style of footy, I think, matches up pretty well against the Warriors team in this pocket of, it's not mediocrity, because they're a lot better than they have been when they were mediocre. Consistently finishing, well, the Warriors are in the Warriors zone right now. How about that? They're 10th. So everything we came to dislike about the Warriors revolved around them finishing between 10th and 14th. And right now they're 10th, like it's a bit weird.
Yeah, I mean they could be like fourth or fifth in 2 weeks with a couple wins, but right now they're 10th, and that is a wobbly one. For the record, the Dragons beat the Sea Eagles and also beat the Titans. So there's confusion over the consistency of those teams and how the Warriors results stack up against them. But as far as Dragons results go, consistency across the board. Beat the Sea Eagles, beat the Warriors, beat the Titans, which is like, I don't know. I found that quite interesting watching that game, because I think when the Dragons beat Manly, it was just the worst game I've ever seen, where both teams made like double-digit errors, or at least it felt like that way. And just Manly made a few more of them. And then when Manly played against the Warriors, Daly Cherry Evans, who'd been pretty rancid against the Dragons, had a spectacular game. And then almost led them to victory. Warriors managed to pull a rabbit out of the hat towards the end, but then couldn't get it done in golden points, settled for a point apiece. Against the Dragons, yeah, it felt like the Warriors were settling into their kind of groove, but then it also very quickly, like you said, it began to feel like that was actually the Dragons' groove. And the feeling I had throughout a lot of that game was that the Dragons were kind of beating the Warriors at their own game plan. And I don't necessarily know that that's something the Dragons were trying to do. I think just these two teams probably have very similar styles of how they want to play. I think well, it gets different when you get into attacking stuff, but I think defensively both these teams try to set a pretty similar foundation. And yeah, it kind of felt like the things that the Warriors do when they win were things that the Dragons were doing against them. And it wasn't necessarily like Ben Hunt kicking perfectly to the corners and then getting tackles inside the 10 like Sean Johnson does for the Warriors. But they didn't have to be that because once they settled into the grind, it was the Warriors who kept cracking first and making little mistakes, not big mistakes, not like dropping the ball in their own goal line kind of stuff and six again inside the 10. There's not so much of those kind of things, but it was just like I don't know, little moments where a fumble here or misplay the ball or whatever. I can't remember specifics, but stuff like I don't know, maybe on halfway and it lets the Dragons just move the I don't know, like the slider up the field a little bit so where they're able to dominate a bit more territory. And like it wasn't the flashy X Factor stuff from the Dragons that did anything outside of maybe a bit of Zach Lomax. It was just hard running and making fewer errors, and that's normally something that the Dragons are on the wrong side of. But in this case, I don't know, they ground it out in a way that it was surprisingly quite impressive. I don't know exactly what that says about the Warriors, but I do think that was like I mean, that is the best performance the Dragons have had all season for sure. And whether that came with some kind of stylistic alignment where it was just the right matchup for them to be able to do that, I don't know, or if it was just a good day. I did find it really funny. There was an interview with Manu Brown afterwards, who did end up playing in this game and debuted for the old Rev V there. And he was talking about like, the sky's the limit for this team. I'm thinking, well, bro, you've been there for 1 week. Like, we're going to need to introduce you to the concept of a false dawn because we've seen this before from many NRL teams who have struggled to get out of the sort of bottom half of the table. The NRL fluctuates from week to week. Let's see what this balances out for the Dragons with after a month. But nice little introduction for them. And I don't know. Did you get this? It sounds like you kind of did get a similar vibe. It just sort of felt like the Dragons beat the Warriors by doing the things that the Warriors usually do to other teams in order to beat them. Maybe that's just NRL standards. That's just how you win an NRL game, no matter who you are. I don't know.
And we've talked about it, like the effort, chasing on the inside,
effort,
like
intensity, all that stuff.
The Christian Tuipulotu was awesome on the wing. He was a massive help. Just his powerful running, good wing play. As you said, Manu Brown came into the game. Ben Murdoch-Masila came off the bench as well. So the two Otahuhu juniors were pretty awesome against the Warriors. Manu Brown from Christchurch also dabbled in some footy there. The Warriors under 17s, they are in the Harold Matthews Cup final on Saturday. So shout out to them. Don't really care about under 17s footy. Then you go up to under 19s footy, where I do care a little bit more. And we've got the Dragons versus the Bulldogs. Dragons don't have much Kiwi NRL flavour in their SG ball group, but the Bulldogs certainly do. Pick of the bunch there is Sasaya Alatini from Christchurch. He's a Hornby junior and he's been scoring a lot of tries. They've also got Shea Fa'aonga, who is a Point Chevalier junior. I think he went to Kelston Boys High School. Roy Tatupu was at Mount Albert Grammar School playing first 15. Tatupu's played a bit of fullback, bit of wing, and Fa'aonga played fullback in the win over the Roosters on the weekend. And they've also got Sione Siulua, who I believe is a Manurewa junior. And We know the Bulldogs are doing a lot of Kiwi NRL recruitment. That's evident in a good SG Ball team who will play the final this weekend. Warriors didn't get the win over the Dragons in the NRL, but they did have wins in New South Wales Cup and Jersey Flegg, which is interesting because that is the first Warriors win in Jersey Flegg this season. Even if the ladder doesn't seem to have been updated. But the Dragons are fourth. So the Warriors had a win over a better team. And in New South Wales Cup, the Dragons are sixth now and the Warriors are ninth. So the Warriors defeated a better Dragons team in both New South Wales Cup and Jersey Flegg. The most interesting thing in the lower grades for the Warriors is that Luke Hanson apparently played Jersey Flegg and then he played New South Wales Cup in the halves. So this was Luke Hanson's first game in the halves for New South Wales Cup this season. Talked a lot about Luke Hanson over the summer. Young half who played SG Ball and Jersey Flegg for the Panthers last season. Now he comes to the Warriors and he had a little crack at New South Wales Cup footy. Also really loving Jacob Auloa at hooker. He was in the SG Ball team to start the season. Now he is racking up games as starting hooker in New South Wales Cup. I think he's also a point chef junior in Auckland. So some good stuff happening there in the lower grades for the Warriors. Shout out to the Jersey Flegg team, which has got a lot of players from SG Ball, but also some pretty solid prospects entering the ranks around that under 21 age group. What else do we have? You want to break down some Wellington Phoenix footy? They had a draw. And as we said earlier, you are covering a lot of these games for the Wellington Phoenix at the moment. Says here they're still top of the table.
They are, because Central Coast didn't play. So a point puts them ahead of Central Coast because Central Coast had their Kyrgyzstan game, went over there, drew 1-1. Brian Kaltak scored, but then they conceded right at the end. And then the Dubai airport flooded and they couldn't get home. So they had to postpone the game that was against Adelaide, which throws up some ramifications. But like, yeah, as far as like the last games of the season no longer take place at the same time, but they could still work out for the Phoenix because if the Jets, having drawn with the Phoenix here, if the Jets do beat Central Coast next week, and at the same time the Phoenix beat Macarthur in their last home game of their last game of the regular season, but it is a home game where they're expecting a big crowd. That would put the Phoenix 4 points clear, with Central Coast still would have a game to play, but obviously you can't get 4 points from one game. So if that did happen, Phoenix would win the minor premiership, and they would know so on the day of the final game. That does require the Phoenix to win and Central Coast to lose at the same time. If it's a draw, then the draw, like Central Coast have the tiebreaker and gets frisky from there. But yeah, I went through some of those ramifications. It's not in the written piece. It's not over the battle for first, but you know, I do. It does seem like the coach and the team are maybe beginning to shift their focus a bit more towards semi-finals type stuff and how they're going to attack the championship rather than the premiership. So it's this draw makes it a little bit more unlikely that they can finish first, but it's definitely not out of the realms of possibility.
What are you making about Wellington Phoenix footy at the moment? I've stated that I don't necessarily see championship traits in the Warriors right now, which is fine. Are you seeing a Wellington Phoenix team that can win the A-League?
Yes, like if you shift the focus to less specifically this last game and more like even just how they've been playing for the last month, where there's been some up and down stuff, but like the ability to come through and score a 95th minute winner against Melbourne Victory in that game. Like that's a championship caliber kind of thing. And they've scored a lot of. This is another thing I went through in the roundup of that last game was a lot of late sort of goals that they've been scored. They've conceded a few late goals as well. Obviously, the Central Coast game they lost to a stoppage time winner in that one. But just in general throughout the entire season, they've tended to have the better of that than not. Like they've scored more late goals than they've conceded. They've got a lot of result altering late goals. That's definitely championship caliber sort of credentials. The ability to play, right up beyond 90 minutes all the way to the final whistle and still be threatening, still be finding important moments. Obviously their defensive solidity remains. That's championship credential. They're still the best defense in the A-League. The only goal they conceded against Newcastle was a bit of a freak one where Paulson scores an own goal, fumbling across behind himself. You know, he's now made one mistake this season. So I don't even think I mentioned that in the write-up, the Paulson own goal. I just don't see that as something that's going to shake him or knock him off course or be repeatable or whatever. I think that's just a freak incident that all goalkeepers will have one of them now and then, and he's got his out of the way with before the playoffs. No dramas. However, there were some moments against Newcastle where they dominated possession, and that's not something they normally do. And I think that might have been a little bit of an issue for them. It's like they're not actually necessarily built to be a team that has that much ball and so much of it in the opposition half against a deep packed defensive structure. They prefer to be able to run at you. They prefer to be able to counter attack, soak up pressure of their own, and then get out on the break. And not being able to do that against Newcastle led to a very different looking type of Phoenix performance where, yeah, the possession, highest mark they've had in the game all season, more shots than they've had in any game this season, higher XG than they've had in any game this season. And it led to a disappointing outcome where Rufer missing a penalty at the end that would have bailed them out. But sometimes players miss penalties. Rufer was the right dude to take it. He literally scored a 95th minute penalty equalizer against Melbourne Victory back, I think, in January, a few months back. There's nothing to there's no autopsy to be done there. The fact is he just missed it. Sometimes players miss penalties, right? The fact is they had so many chances throughout, and Costa Barbarossa's had a lot of them too. He was responsible for he did score one goal, so credit for that. That was an important goal. Keeps the minor premiership dream at least alive, if on life support. But he should have probably had a hat trick. He should have had at least two for some of the chances that fell his way, and he wasn't the only one. They just, I don't know, it felt like a bit of the finishing was exposed in a way that it was last season, and it's a reminder of that whole pattern of how did they overcome being a bad finishing team last year to become a good finishing team this year from one season to the next with the same players? Well, in fact, worse than the same players, because their only really good finisher is Oscar Zavada, and he's hardly played this season. How did they improve that? By getting better chances, efficiency, fewer chances, but better quality chances. And this was a game in which the opposition forced them to be the other way around and just told them, you can have all the ball, you can keep attacking, you can do what you want, but we're shutting down those higher percentage ones, which even then they didn't fully successfully do. And Costa on another day does get a hat trick, and the Phoenix win this one comfortably. But I do think that's not necessarily a concern, because I don't know that's something that the matchups and the finals is going to draw out of them. But it is a reminder of where this team's come from. Maybe it's not like suddenly these guys are amazing finishers. It's just that they've had a way of getting them into better positions to be able to score goals. And maybe they just had a game against Newcastle where they reverted back to some bad habits. I don't know. But even still, I say that they had enough chances to score. They just didn't do it. And at some point, even bad finishers have got to put the ball in the back of the net sometimes. And yeah, they got one. They could have had two with the penalty. They might have had three or four if they'd just been sharper throughout, but they weren't. And that's, I don't know, that's just the way it goes. But it's an interesting coincidence that the game in which they had they were almost like twice as effective in terms of some of these sort of broader stats, the shots, the possession, the XG, and yet like half as efficient with it, which is interesting. More volume did not make them better. More volume made them worse in this case.
We did talk about Macey Fraser in our subscriber podcast on Thursday. I'm curious, with a couple of days, more details, more information, is there anything that has stood out for you about this signing in the wash-up that you've found, that you've thought about? Anything else?
Well, the main development that's happened since is the Utah Royals perspective, where they actually played against Abby Erceg's team on the weekend and were pretty much second best from start to finish, but they did equalize in stoppage time of the first half, and they looked all right for a little, like at 1-1 at halftime, they're in an all right spot, and then they just got smoked in the second half. It was the last half hour they conceded 4 times. They lost 5-1 in the end. So unfortunately, no Erceg goal in there. Didn't manage to pop up with a rising header from a corner or anything. She's normally got a couple of those per season in her bag, but didn't need one on this occasion. But yeah, it was a fairly comprehensive loss. And Utah Royals have been losing quite a few games to start the season. And they are an expansion team. They're quite young. I think they had about like 5 rookies involved in this game as well. So, and they've got a few injuries to some of their more important players. So they are definitely a squad that is being stretched quite thin and seeing results to prove that. I think that's some of the context with which they've picked up Macey Fraser. Is like when you're an expansion team, even though they're a revival expansion team, they used to be a team, then they weren't, now they are again. I don't know if it's scouting or whatnot, but they're definitely going with a little bit of like, we need to strengthen this team. How do we do that? Let's look abroad. They've traded for Amandine Henry, who's a French international who was playing with Ellie Riley at LA Angel City recently in LA. But it's not an international signing, but it's an international player being signed. They've brought Macey Fraser in. They've also just this morning, I think, signed a Spanish fullback. So there's been a little bit of a like, for considering they're 4 or 5 games into the season, that's a lot of transfer work to be doing now rather than doing it like 2 months ago. But I think that's part of like realizing, well, we've started playing a game and the distance towards these other teams is a bit more than we thought. We need to stock up. And maybe in season, it's not so easy to find the American players, so we're looking further abroad. Did hear an interview, I think it was on the White Shorts podcast, where Macey Fraser said that she had spoken to Katie Bowen about this move ahead of time. Obviously, she knew further, but she obviously knew before we did about this, before it was made public. She had spoken to Katie Bowen a little bit about going to Utah. Katie Bowen used to play there. And good friend of their coach, Amy Rodriguez, as a teammate back in those days. So that stuff is all nice and cool. I just hope they can get their visa sorted quickly to get her in, because I do think if she gets in sooner rather than later, that's probably a little bit easier to start getting quick games while the team's still trying to figure out some combinations.
What else is happening on the Flying Kiwis beat? I did see your post about Marko Stamenic, 22-year-old, who has back-to-back league and cup doubles, which I believe is in Serbia.
Sort of. He did a league and cup double with Copenhagen and Denmark last year. Now, having moved to Serbia, they haven't done it yet. I don't want to jump the gun, but after winning 3-2 against Partizan, it looks like Crvena Zvezda, they're 10 points clear now with 6 games to go. So they're almost certainly, they just beat their second place rivals. They were losing 2-1 with about 2 minutes to go. For some reason, there was 15 minutes of stoppage time added on, so I only watched the highlights, which are extended highlights in Serbia. They go nuts. It's like a 20-minute highlights package they just chuck up on YouTube, which is wild. There were a lot of like flare action. This was a big sort of derby game, so maybe the ultras got crazy and they had to delay some stuff with the smoke. They kicked off in a pile of like red orange smoke anyway, so what else would you expect from some Eastern European derby football? I guess great atmosphere, like insane stuff.
That's that's even more impressive. He's chasing a league and cup double in two different competitions, which
Yeah,
means it's more Marko than the team. He's bringing
I
winning mahi
guess.
to two different teams in two different leagues. Like that's better than back to back league and cup doubles with one team. He's bringing the certain championship pedigree and DNA that we're looking for the Warriors, that we're looking for in the Wellington Phoenix. Marko Stamenic himself has it.
Yeah, and unlike the Wellington Phoenix, Savannah Svesta scored their 90. It wasn't even 95th. It was like 90 plus 10th minute of stoppage time penalty to win that game 3-2. So that puts them very much in the box. They actually play Partizan again on Thursday morning, I think, New Zealand time, in the semi-finals of the Cup. So win that, and they're almost certain that that's the only team that's really threatening them this season. They've pretty much wrapped up the title. If they can win on Thursday, they're probably going to win a cup title on top of that. That would be back-to-back league and cup doubles in consecutive seasons in two different countries for Marko Stamenic, having played, let's not forget, having played Champions League group stage for both of them in each of those seasons as well.
What else is your pick from the Flying Kiwis football?
Indy Riley scored another goal. That's always cool. Got to hype up the footy ferns who pop up with goal contributions. That's always important. Some dumb stuff in terms of like relegations and things, and a few of those counts, but I'll save that for the Flying Kiwis route. Don't need to go through the sad ones on here. You know who I think is an undercover one that probably earns a little bit more hype than he gets is Andre de Jong at Stellenbosch in South Africa, where like I think this is his fourth season in South Africa. He's played for three different clubs. He's had like times where he's been out injured. He's had times where he's just been available but hardly played. At the moment, he's playing for a team that has gone 23 games in a row without defeat across all competitions. They have won one cup competition, the sort of South African League Cup type thing, the Carling Knockout. They've already won that. They're second place. They're not going to win the league, but they are in second place and looking to hold on to that, which would get them, I think, African Champions League if they finish second. And they're into the semi-finals of the main cup, the sort of South African, whatever, I can't remember what they call it, the Nedbank Cup. That Nedbank is a sponsor. I don't know what the title of the trophy is, but they're into the semi-finals there. Andre de Jong's actually scored 3 goals in that. He scored on the weekend the winner against TS Galaxy, the 2-1 win in the league. He has 7 goals overall this season, but he's sort of only in the last couple of months become he used to be a bit of a start one game off the bench, next game start off the bench kind of rotation. He's been starting regularly for the last couple of months now, scoring some good goals, scored the winner on the weekend. Nice little sort of back post finish, dinking it over the goalkeeper, and then there was a defender tried to clear it off the line but didn't realize he was standing 2 meters behind the goal line, which doesn't really help your cause there. And he has scored those 7 goals in 4 different competitions. So he scored in 3 different cup competitions, and he scored in the league for a team that's 23 games undefeated, and contributing quite a lot for them at the moment. That's his little sneaky one. He hasn't been selected for the last few all-white squads. He's not been getting picked, but he is doing some pretty fine stuff under the radar in South Africa at the moment.
Let's finish with a bit of NBL basketball, where the Franklin Bulls are now the only undefeated team in the NBL. They're 4 from 4, first spot, and then they are followed by Wellington Saints 4-1. Otago Nuggets 3-1, Tuatara 4-2, and then there's a bunch of teams on 2-2. Southland Sharks are yet to win a game. They're 0-6. Manawatu are 1-5. Do you have any talking points with the Franklin Bulls?
Well, 1 or 2. I mean, they've been excellent. Like that's quite obvious. They've been really good. They've been winning games. They're undefeated. I think a couple of those have been very good. Like think they've beaten a couple of the teams around them as well. They beat Otago. They beat the Tuatara. Then that's upcoming. Next game is against the Tuatara, so that's a bit of a blockbuster because I don't know. Looking at the table, it feels like it's starting to separate into tiers. Like we had that sort of early phase with some of the imports haven't arrived yet, or a few guys are just sitting out the first game or two to recover from NBL Australian exploits and whatnot. Feels like that's starting to settle now, and the table's kind of breaking up into sort of like I think the top four. Where are we? That's Franklin, that's Otago, that's Wellington, and that's Auckland. I think seem like the four best teams, and I expect over the course of the season that'll kind of like shuffle around between them a bit. Then you've got this whole big long thing of like 2-win teams, and like that's hard to say how that's going to go. I think Canterbury have room to be better. I think Taranaki could make a run. I think Nelson actually won a couple games in a row. Then you got Manawatu and Southland, who don't really seem like there's a lot more upside. Like that kind of seems like there's the bottom of the table sorted right there. Southland have lost all 6 games and have actually been like thrashed in a couple of them. I think there was, the Tuatara beat them 94-54. So if there's a team that scores fewer than 54 points in a game this season, that's almost an achievement to be that low. Like Southland are struggling. They've got a couple injuries. Like I think Alonzo Burton is meant to be there and he's out injured, and Braden Inga, one of their better Kiwi dudes, but they also just don't look very good, which it's a bit of a bummer because I was hoping to see Callum McRae on a winning team. I wanted to see what that would look like because I reckon he's a dude who has some fringe Australian kind of higher on a potential if he could, put himself in the shop window for the NBL sides that way. He's a good, like great size, good rebounder, can score around the rim, solid college career for a Kiwi player as well, and also sneakily like good passer for a dude that big as well. A lot of these Kiwi bigs are sneaky good passers. Obviously, Stephen Adams is an outstandingly good passer. We know that. But like, Rob Lowe gets a bunch of assists every time. Callum McRae's out there dishing some dimes. Not often, but often enough. But he plays for a terrible team. So Southland Sharks are bad. The thing I like about where are we here? The thing I like about Franklin, which I don't think I've really mentioned before, sort of focused a little bit on the, Luther Muhammad is fantastic for them, an import who's pushing some MVP candidacy. Few of those sort of ex-breakers guys hanging around. I like what Ethan Rusbatch is doing this season. Ethan Rusbatch is scoring 14.8 points per game. He is shooting, where are we here? 41.7% from 3-point range on almost 4 3-point makes per game. That is outstanding. He hit one on the weekend, like from out on the sideline about 2 meters deep from the thing. One of those like just like late shot clock situations. Throw it up. Might have been the end of the half or quarter. I can't remember exactly, but he just drains that one from the sideline. He's having, he's scoring big points. He's hitting shots. He's playing like Ethan Rusbatch played a couple years ago. I don't know that we've seen like this version of him, this excited, this like having this much fun for a couple years in the NZNBL. And here he is out there being a pretty important contributor for what has through the first month of the season been the best team in the NBL. So love that from Ethan Rusbatch. We talk about the up and coming Kiwi players a lot. You got to shout out the veterans as well, don't you? When they're out there having, resurgent seasons.
It'd be rude not to highlight that your man's Rob Lowe has signed on with Melbourne United again.
Yeah, that's right. He did too. Coming out of retirement again for I think that's the second time now, maybe third if you count him coming out of retirement for NZNBL, although it wasn't clear if he was going to retire from that or not, or like where the line in professional basketball lies. But I guess he just had that much fun with Melbourne as an injury replacement last year. And important thing to look at this from Melbourne's perspective as to why they've gone after him, because I don't think Rob Lowe would have come back to play for the Breakers. I think that bridge maybe got burnt. Don't think he necessarily would have come back to play for anyone other than Melbourne United. But they've quite clearly specifically targeted him. You think, why was he with them at the start of last season? Apart from the fact that like he has an existing combination from the Tall Blacks and Breakers with Shaley, and also Dean Vickerman would have coached him. I imagine maybe overlapped at the Breakers. I'm not actually sure 100% on that, but I think he would have at some point. So there was like connections there to be made. But why did they sign him as an injury replacement? Because Joe Luala-Keel was out injured, and that was the end for them needing a replacement. Where's a guy who we know we can slot into this system pretty seamlessly for a couple months to start the campaign, and it was seamless. He was excellent. What's Joe Luala-Keel doing this offseason? He's told Melbourne United he doesn't want to come back because he wants to explore his overseas options. He wants to go play in Europe. Fair enough. He's at that stage of his career. How do they replace him? Probably with an import, but how do you help an import to settle is to have a very good local backup who can help impart the system. Who knows the system? Rob Lowe knows the system. So you get Rob Lowe in, you convince him, maybe like, I don't know, give him some concessions to make sure his family can get settled in around, because that was the main reason why he didn't want to play in Australia beforehand. Sorted. Like, he loved the atmosphere with the team. Obviously, the team loved him. Done. Love that. Like, I think that's a really cool example of a free agency thing working nicely, where there was a player who was targeted specifically because of the fit, because of the chemistry, and then everything, and go out and get him, make everything comfortable, and there you go. Rob Lowe is back in the NBL for another season, for the full season this time, not just for the start and then leaving.
Yeah, given how much you talked about him last season when he only played for a month or so, be
interesting to see what happens.
See what happens.
They were like 7-1 in the games that he played.
Yeah,
they were winning everything.
We definitely heard about it throughout the season. You highlighted a post. I will, for any Kiwi cricket fans, and you want a bit of Twitter action, you should follow Short Fly Slip, not Shorty Fly Slip, which old Nick over here brought up. Sounds like
That's right. Shorty Fly Slip is maybe the after hours version.
Yeah, that's like the hip hop version. Stop Shorty Fly Slip. It's just Short Fly Slip, which makes a lot more sense.
It does.
But you also retweeted a post by Tim Smith, who is at QK Hoops, and he offered some stats about the Rapid League, which is like a curtain raiser development competition ahead of the NBL, and bunch of per 30 statistics, which basically round out to a efficiency measurement of basketball. What perked up your antenna from that chart? There does seem to be a focus. Obviously, this is a development competition, so there's a lot of young Kiwi basketball players here. What did you find interesting when you had a gaze at that chart? And maybe there's some names that we need to keep tabs on over the coming years of future Kiwi basketballers.
There definitely are, and there's a few of these dudes who are like, getting some semi decent minutes for the proper teams after the Rapid League as well. But definitely the perked up aspect of it was seeing old Hayden Jones at the top there. Son of Phil recently made a Tall Blacks debut. Little bit of a like convenient, we're going to chuck a development player in there for these games kind of thing. Not necessarily, he obviously wasn't picked on merit when he's still playing Rapid League, but 35.3 points per 30, what we say, per 30, so per 30 minutes across the 3 games that he's played. With very, very high shooting percentages. I think that tells you a dude who is one of the better prospects we got in the NBL this season, and someone who is, he is another one who is getting some pretty solid minutes for, I think that's the Nelson Giants, isn't it? And I don't know that he's had like a game yet, sort of thing. Like one of those ones where it's like, oh, this was the Hayden Jones breakout kind of performance. But I think that's coming. I think before the season's through, he's going to have that one where, I don't know, he scores 25 points or something, or hits a a game-winning three-pointer or something like that. I reckon that's going to happen at some stage before the season is through, and it hasn't happened yet. So I don't know. Set your watches for that.
Beauty. We might wrap it up there because it's been a bit of a nightmare to do the old podcast today, but may that serve as a reminder to us all to slow down, tap in with the present moment, roll through the adversity, and just be grateful. So we're out here living our best mindfulness example. And of course, we appreciate your support, appreciate you listening to the Niche Case. Make sure you let us know how you're listening. Subscribe through Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Let us know that you're out there. And we will be back later in the week. Haven't organised it yet, but it might be if Anzac Day is Thursday. Warriors are playing Thursday afternoon. Might be a subscriber podcast reaction to the Warriors on Friday. See how we go. But we will be doing our subscriber podcast later this week, so stay tuned for that on Patreon and with a paid Substack subscription. Otherwise, big up yourself, love yourself, kia kaha, stay beautiful, chur chur.